Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's now time to discuss revenue generation and dispensation of services in Lagos State and indeed Nigeria. And joining us now for that discussion is Ayo Subair, Executive Chairman of the Lagos Internal Revenue Service, with over 34 years working experience as a chartered accountant. He started his career with Pricewaterhouse Chartered Accountants and later ventured into private practice in 1987 with Ayo Subair and Co. Chartered Accountants, where he was the managing partner. He was also the pioneer director of Lagos State Lotteries Board and worked with various international agencies such as the International Finance Corporation. Ayo Subair, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you here, and thank you for, agreeing to come to Arise News, the morning show. Well, quickly, let me ask you, in the 2020 budget, the Lagos State government has set for itself an IGR of about 70 billion naira monthly. Is that target really feasible this year? How much exactly does your agency make a month right now that you want to jump from that, present revenue base to 70 billion naira every month or yearly, let me say?
Okay, thank you for the question. We really believe that it is an achievable, if you can call it a feat. Presently, we generate approximately 30 billion a month. And with this increase, it's actually about 500 billion is attributable to what we are expected to collect. And that works out at about 42 billion a month. And of course, the rest of it comes in other things, capital receipts, etc. But out of the about 860 billion that is expected to be generated internally, 500 billion comes from LIRS. And we're very optimistic that we can achieve that.
What's the strategy in place for achieving that? Multiple taxation or more taxation for Lagos residents and individuals?
Well, there are various strategies, we're majorly going to leverage on technology. But I can assure you that there are no more new taxes coming. I think generally there's a misconception by members of the public on this issue of multiple taxation. People take other types of levies and administrative charges and call them multiple taxes. But really and truly, we must realize that we have 3 layers of government: federal, state, and the local government. And each level is charged with different types of taxes. And I can assure you that there's no way that the same type of tax will be charged for the same service by different layers of government. So half of the time, there are some direct services that the local governments perform, for instance, and they have to make some administrative charges for those. There are also some other types of levies, but generally everybody just calls it taxation. LIRS is empowered to charge certain taxes as prescribed by federal legislation, and we don't go outside what we're supposed to do. So I can speak 100% for LIRS that we don't introduce any types of foreign taxes into what is on the roll already.
Right. So your job regards taxes, tax collection, and what have you. But I'm going to expand that a little bit. Many Lagos residents feel that in spite of the high IGR recorded by Lagos and all the taxes and levies that we pay, we don't really get bang for our buck. We don't get real value for our taxes. Do you agree with this?
No, I totally disagree, because the government is a very responsible body, and as much as possible, there's a lot of infrastructure that is provided, as well as qualitative social services. And as much as possible, Lagos has been blessed with a lot of very good administrators, right from the start of, from the time of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, right through Fashola, Ambode, and our present amiable governor, Baba Jide Sanwo-Olu, they have a lot of programs for the state. And you can see Lagos is bursting at the seams. We have approximately 24 million people in Lagos. So there's a lot of people to cater for. And it's difficult to satisfy everybody 100%. But generally, you know, you don't need to drive very far around Lagos to see all the major developmental projects that are all over. And we as LIRS try to showcase, you know, what the government is doing so that people have to earn the trust of government. They have to, you know, they want to make sure that whatever they pay in taxes, they can actually see, you know, in terms of physical structures and services. So I don't think I will agree with that assertion. But of course, we know we can always, the government must always improve. Government must always do better. What we tend to do is we benchmark ourselves on developed countries. But it took something for them to get to that point. And the citizenry appreciate and know that there's a civic duty and obligation to pay their taxes. And there's a very high correlation between payment of taxes and development. So the government will always strive to do better.
Great. Now, I'd like to bring us back to a point that Dr. Abati had brought up about the multiplicity of taxes as well. And I'm bringing this up because Lagos is seen by residents and businesses as one of the most expensive places in the world to live in. And this is partly blamed on that idea of the multiplicity of taxes and levies, including on land as well. So how exactly is the LIRS looking to streamline this or looking to improve the ease of doing business in terms of taxes this year and the revision of taxes maybe as well?
Okay, well, in terms of revision of taxes, we are not really empowered to revise taxes. The taxes that we execute are basically federal taxes, you know, pay as you earn, personal income taxes, all these other taxes. They are all done by legislation, and we have no powers really to amend what is there. But in terms of making life easier for taxpayers, we continuously look at technology, you know, as a means of making life much easier. The ease of doing business, you know, is very key to the federal administration. And we in Lagos also subscribe to that. So what we have done is to have several types of solutions, you know, online solutions to ease the payment of taxes. So we will continue to invest more in technology to make sure that taxpayers can, you know, meet their obligations at the minimal cost.
Well, earlier 2018, there was this big controversy over the plan by the Ambode administration to review and revise land use charges in Lagos. And, you know, many people thought that was one major mistake that he made. But I'm sure that the issue will still be somewhere there in the books. And you are the taxman of Lagos. Is there any plan by this administration to go back to that issue, either to still revise or review the charges or to make life easier for businesses and landlords in Lagos by even reducing the land use charge? Now that you say you have some other creative strategies to generate revenue, and you said there will be no, you know, additional taxation, which will be quite comforting for people who live and work and do business in Lagos.
Yes, if you recollect, at the time the land use controversy was around, the government reversed itself and suspended the initial provisions and also gave some element of discount and reduction, as well as completely exempting certain residents from paying this. But I will tell you that presently, the Lagos House of Assembly is reviewing the land use regulations, and I'm sure before the end of this month, if I can stick my neck out, before the end of this month, I think the new regulations will be passed, and a lot of Lagosians will be happy.
That's to hear. Now, Lagos has seen several industries relocate to the neighboring Ogun State. What is it doing to bring them back?
Well,
No. You want Lagos State to bring back business from Ogun State?
Absolutely not.
No, please let the businesses stay in Ogun State. You know? Let Ogun State enjoy the fact of consanguinity.
That's
or if you like,
can we
contiguity.
even have some sort of pretense at impartiality? Can we not be Egba for the purposes of this interview?
Okay. Ask him.
And discuss
to go and
Lagos
bring businesses
State.
from Ogun State to Lagos.
Do you have a strategy, or have you dashed us in Ogun State?
Well, Lagos is a center of excellence. Lagos attracts all manner of people and businesses. And it's expected that if there's some element of saturation or dissatisfaction with certain services, it's a free world. People are allowed to move around the states. But in terms of what we're doing, we are definitely not going to lobby businesses to come back to Lagos, if indeed some have actually left Lagos. You know, we don't have strong statistics on that. But, you know, there are border towns between Lagos and Ogun State. And many of these companies were always on the borderline. So some were a bit confused as to who to report to, whether to Lagos State or to Ogun State. But with clear demarcation and with more efficiency on the side of Ogun State, you know, they are able to reach out to more companies. But more importantly, what I think is happening is Lagos has always been in the forefront of taxation, you know, and Lagos has been very efficient and effective in collecting taxes. So after some time, people, recalcitrant taxpayers, would want a bit of succor and believe that if they move from one area to the other area, perhaps the tax people will not be so efficient, which is what has really happened. But much credit to my colleagues in Ogun State. They're ramping up all their taxation strategies. And very soon, maybe these same people will run back to Lagos to come and join us. But we encourage a lot of commerce in Lagos. Our government in Lagos supports, you know, businesses heavily. So I believe that it's a matter of time before all these businesses start to come back to Lagos. But there are very few, you know. If you have your statistics, you know that there are very few.
Or they continue to expand through Ogun, Oyo, and the rest of the southwest, which would be amazing for the traffic situation on the roads. But you recently also launched the Enterprise Tax Administration System, ETax. What is that all about? How does it work? And how does it generate more tax or revenue? The entire system, ETax. Okay,
yeah, it's a new innovation on the part of the Lagos Internal Revenue Service. It's an end-to-end digital tax administration solution. And by that, we mean that a lot of taxpayers don't really have to come to LIRS, you know, to the physical locations in order to carry out their tax activities. They can go online to that solution, and it starts with registration. People can register online. They can file their returns. They can print and generate and print their assessments. They can make payments online. They can print the receipts after they have made payments. They can actually also print tax clearance certificates. And they can also track the progress of the tax audits that have been carried out on the various companies. And all this from, you know, from their homes, from wherever they are. They might be in a restaurant and decide to interact with the LIRS. So at the end of the day, you know, like I said earlier on, the ease of doing business, we are very concerned. We want to reduce the cost of people filing their taxes and carrying out their tax activities. So it's a win-win situation for all because we expect there to be a lot more traffic on the platform. And over time, a lot of Lagosians will learn how to carry out all their tax activities. So we're very optimistic that it will work for everybody and it will help bring in more taxpayers.
Well, the President of Nigeria, President Buhari, recently signed the finance bill into law, and the reaction has been quite mixed. The objective, yes, is to help the small and medium-scale enterprises to attract investment, to expand the revenue base for the federal government and also for the states. But what's your own reaction to that? Not necessarily in terms of the fact that VAT will bring more money to the state, but in terms of the rules, in terms of the transition for taxpayers, and also in terms of how people have reacted to that bill. What's your take?
Okay, I think it's an excellent move on the part of the federal government to have signed into law the finance bill, because for too long, our taxes have just been static. They've remained the same. So it's refreshing to know that things are going to change. All the unfair tax laws are going to be, reviewed in favor of bringing more developmental strategies in place. In terms of the reaction of the people, it's like you said, it's been mixed. Some people are happy, some are not so happy. All the multinationals that had issues with excess dividend policy, for instance, will be smiling. We have all the citizenry saying that, the VAT rate, should not have been increased. But it's very debatable. On my own part, I would advise that federal government, concentrates more on indirect taxation than direct, which is what VAT is all about. And we almost remember that the rates in Nigeria are quite low. We have the lowest rate in the world at 5%. And at the end of the day, the government needs revenue. If we want to have meaningful development, government must generate revenue. So I think it's a good move. And we hope that it will be an annual event like it used to be in the past. So
you are excited that Lagos State will get more money from VAT, of course?
Well, in terms of the direct collection, it's a federal inland revenue service that collects VAT. But at the end of the day, there's a sharing formula between the federal government, the states, and the local governments. So we're excited that we'll get a bit more. But as you know, Lagos has been, is almost self-sufficient. We do not rely on receipts from the federal government. We generate our own revenue here. So yes, it's going to be an addition to the pot, but not that significant for the state.
Let's talk about expanding the tax base, because there are all kinds of alarming statistics that out of, you've said 24 million residents, you only have about 1 million paying taxes. Is that correct? Or is it even lower than that? And what are the efforts being made to tap into the informal sector? What kind of advocacy is available?
Well, that figure is not exactly correct. We have approximately about 4.5 million registered taxpayers, and we intend to move this to an average of 7 to 8 million at the end of the day. But all the time, it's a continuous exercise. Unfortunately, the way Nigeria is, we have problems with identification of residents. And we're working, there are a lot of strategies we have in place to try and ramp up and increase the number of taxpayers. So it's a work in progress for us.
Well, that's good to hear, because the entire chicken and egg situation in itself when it comes to tax is very disturbing, to say the least. But on a federal level as well, what does the government need to do, aside from what Tundun just mentioned, which is, of course, increasing the tax base, which I also believe is the most important. But what else does the federal government need to do to improve on taxation in Nigeria?
Okay, well, if I was to consult for the federal government, there are a number of measures. One of the things, the key thing, is to review tax laws, which we have taken a small step towards that. But there are still a lot of other laws that really need to be reviewed. Also, it's leveraging on technology. It's all about technology these days. The federal government can, invest more in technology to help increase the tax base. Increasing the tax base is key, both at federal and state levels. rather than think of bringing in new taxes. You know, it's much better to widen the tax net, bring more people in, and that way you can increase revenue. There are also other issues that can be looked into, like the issue of tax waivers. You know, it's a major leakage area.
Yeah.
You know, so reviewing tax waivers and reducing that to a minimum, ensuring that the impact of those waivers will be felt in the economy, and not necessarily, you know, giving all the very rich people more means of getting more wealth.
Well, I don't know how easy it will be to, you know, review tax waivers, considering the fact that it's used as an instrument of political patronage, particularly customs duties and all of that. But it's a good point you have made.
That's why it's controversial.
But in Lagos, you know, other than meeting your revenue target of 70 billion, you know, per month, that's quite a lot of money. What are your other expectations for 2020?
Well, generally, from 2018, as you can see, we invested a lot of money in technology, and we hope that we will sustain that and even bring in more solutions. The other thing that we are getting very big on right now is integration of data, because part of the problem is lack of credible data. So we are hoping to collaborate with other ministries, departments, and agencies, both at the state level and at the federal level. And we're hoping that we'll be able to share information more with at the federal level. And in terms of exchange of information, even on a global level, you know, we need to be able to profile taxpayers in a much better manner. So these are some of the expectations that, you know, that we want to work on. Data integration, widening the tax net generally, and collaboration with other bodies.
Do you have a strategy in place, you know, for engaging taxpayers? Because oftentimes I see tax officials, either from the state or the federal level, going around locking up people's shops, harassing people, carrying some papers and pasting on, you know, businesses and shops and all that. Is there a strategy in place for getting the commitment of taxpayers? Because whatever may have been done, there's still that distrust that, look, we pay this money anyway, what do they do with it?
Yes, we have a lot of strategies in place in terms of enlightenment of residents of the state. And quite a bit of our resources go into this enlightenment strategy. We have teams that go out onto the streets. And when people talk about harassment, that's not entirely true, because there are processes in place. Before it gets to the point of locking up or sealing up businesses, a lot of things must have transpired in between. And it's always the last resort for us. You know, if we are totally recalcitrant and totally unrepentant and not interested in meeting those obligations, you know, even for us to close or seal any business, we usually would revert to the law courts, and we obtain distrain, you know, warrants of distrain before we take such actions. But before then, we continuously communicate with taxpayers. We have a lot of reconciliation meetings. Some don't even show up, some don't turn up, some are not really interested, you know. So those are the ones, the few exceptions that get, you know, the other stick of enforcement. But as much as possible, we want voluntary payments by members of the public. We don't want a situation where we have to carry a stick and chase people up and down. And that's why we have also invested in technology. You know, with technology, people can log in themselves. They don't have to talk. The human element is totally taken out, it's reduced. They don't have to talk to anybody. They can just go onto the system and do almost anything that they would ordinarily do by walking into our offices. And in terms of trust, you know, we try to build the trust. I mean, any taxation system that is devoid of trust, you know, is not really worth anything. So we try to showcase the programs of the state government, as much as possible. We have both, we patronize both electronic and print media. And even at the moment, if you go through some of the newspapers, I'm sure you'll see some adverts. And we always will throw in sweeteners. We are members of a society also. We're not aliens.
And you also pay tax,
yes, mine is deducted at source. So we engage in a lot of programs. And we're also on all the social media platforms.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr.
Ayo
Subair. Good to have you here. And I see you have the badge of the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service. That's good advertisement. Thank you very much.